Very popular search.
I don't, what are we
All
in
right.
competition with?
Ready?
No pressure,
Okay.
Tony.
Okay. Yeah. So it's now 7:03. We'll call the meeting to order. I want to just remind everyone to turn off their cell phones if they can. Certainly, pets running through, children's running through, hungry spouses in the background are also okay during the video conference. I want to thank Lauren for coming in and helping really to run the Zoom meeting for this. It's really a big help for us. Appreciate it because she's coming out and working at night again, more hours for this. And I'm reminded to all the board members that this is on YouTube and potentially there's a number of people watching the meeting. So we've adjusted the agenda a bit to try to keep it to 60 minutes, which is in line with how video conferences usually are the most effective. So we've cut out some of the things that we would normally handle, and we'll see how this goes, and then decide for June if it's run via video conference if we run the same way. So starting the meeting, we'll just ask if there are any citizens' comments.
So there's only one member of the public in the attendee portal, and it might just be somebody who's hooking up to the sound through their cell phone. But if this is someone in the public and you'd like to make comment, you can do so by raising your hand, and I will call on you. You will need to state your first and last name and your address for the record. So we'll give them a second, but they don't seem to be raising their hand. I think you're good to go.
Okay, so then next on the agenda is the approval from the previous meeting. And again, I can't see everyone, so I need a motion to approve the minutes from the previous meeting and a second.
So moved, Art. Kathleen.
Okay, Kathleen,
And
can I have a second?
Second.
Okay, thanks, David. Any comments, corrections, questions? If not, a vote, all in favor to approve the minutes?
Aye.
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 Okay, opposed? No. Minutes are approved. The next thing on the agenda is any correspondence?
No.
No, so there's no correspondence. The next thing is Andrea, the treasurer's report.
Hi, everybody. It's good to see you all. I had sent an email to you earlier saying that we had a zero in the Sunshine Fund, but due to a donation, we have $40. Due to expenditures, including some bereavement and memorial contributions, we have $40 left in the Sunshine Fund. And if you would like to contribute the usual donation of $20, you please put the cash in an envelope with your name on it. And if you can, deposit it into the locked mailbox at the door of the Madison Youth and Family Service building. Molly will collect it and then forward it to me to keep track of.
Is there any way that we could do Venmo or PayPal or any kind of electronic payment?
I don't know.
You're not currently on Venmo, is that correct?
I do. Yeah, I do have I haven't used it very much, but I do have a Venmo account.
You'd have to
Yes.
decide if you wanted to share it.
Yeah. I probably would prefer if you would be able to drop it off at the building, but
I understand.
People, if we're not quite set up to do that at this point, if you want to mail a check, or we do have a drop box out in front of the building. So if you wanted to deliver it, if you're around downtown and you wanted to hand deliver something, you could just place it in the lock box. And if you just, I am checking it most days, but if you just wanted to give me a heads up, I could grab it out of there and get it secure in the building.
Okay.
Or go out to lunch, one or the other, I'm not sure. But likely more in the building.
thank you.
Okay, also Andrea, just on the motion for the donations, would you just go ahead and make the motion to accept those donations, and then we'll get a second?
Okay, move to motion to accept the donation of $40.
Well, no, sorry, not that one, because that one doesn't require a motion. That's the Sunshine Fund. I was referring to the 1340 for the
Oh, I'm
the gift
sorry.
card project and yeah, those two.
I motion to accept the donations.
So
Okay.
I could speak to these, just, it might be helpful to, just to comment a little bit on these. So we have two donations on the agenda for the board to approve. These have been previously approved by the town. And so as an advisory board, it's important that you all know what they are and obviously approve of how we're utilizing them. So there's two actual donations on the agenda right now. You had approved two other donations, I think online in April, that had to do with neighbor to neighbor. So the ones on the agenda for tonight, $1,340 in various gift cards from the gift card project. And that's a small group of, I think it's 4 people in the community, headed by Amy Stepanowski. And they went to area businesses, and they had collected funds for themselves and went to area businesses and paid for gift cards from various businesses, which they then wanted to donate to people who they felt like could use them. So we have them. There's a variety of them. There are some that are for restaurants, some that are for bookstores. Those we have not dispersed yet into the community. We're trying to figure out a really good angle and an appropriate way to share those. So those we still have. The second donation, so that was, I was contacted by Dennis Zolfali. He is, I don't know if he's the owner. I think he's the owner of Z Automotive. He's a Madison resident, and he reached out with an idea that he wanted on his own to purchase a number of gift cards. He picked Schoolhouse Deli, so he wanted to be able to buy enough gift cards, and it was a way for him to then donate those gift cards to people who might need them. So sort of meeting a lot of different needs, helping a local business while getting some gift certificates to people for food, which I thought was a wonderful idea. So with a little bit of connecting between me and Schoolhouse, and the rest of it really was between him and Schoolhouse, and they got them to us, and we are now dispersing those with, and I'll talk about this later, we have a Cobit assistance program, and we've been adding those $10 gift certificates into some of those recipients. So
then with that, unless if there are any questions, certainly ask questions. If not, can I have a motion to accept? Okay, thank you. Thank you, Sarah. A second?
A second.
Thanks, Kristen. Okay, all approved? Aye.
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 Motion carried. Thank you. Okay, thanks, Scott. The next on the, and those really are both really well appreciated. People in the community have just been fantastic during this time, and look forward to some of Scott's comments on how some of these programs are being executed. So the next on our agenda is for the director's report.
all right, so let me just first start by saying how wonderful it is to see everybody. When we made the decision to cancel this in April, it was amid a lot of different things that were going on that time. Like, I think we had the idea that we could pull everyone together on Zoom, but just between all the things that were changing very quickly, it wasn't realistic for us to get everyone together. So now here we are, we're 2 months removed. And the last time we all were sort of in a room together, it was our board and staff enrichment night. And I can remember that night feeling very, very heavy in a lot of ways. Like, we did our programming, and I think that night went really well. Normally we'd be talking about how that went and getting more feedback about how that event went and how it sort of translates into us working together. I remember that night being very heavy in terms of, like, we all knew what was coming, but we weren't there yet. And here we are 2 months later, still in the midst of the pandemic. And, you know, I think I've said this to many people, and I'm sorry if you've heard me say this before, but there's a story that everyone has for themselves for how this has affected them. And there are things that we all have in common in terms of what we've had to deal with. And then there are things that are very unique and personal to all of us. And so it's a very unique time to be a part of anything, you know, whether it's a group, you know, a social group, a friend group, a family group, in this case, you know, a community board, because there's just so many different ways that this whole thing has impacted us personally, professionally. So when we thought about this board meeting, and I talked with the executive committee last week, you know, our sense was, let's keep it to an hour. I could probably pick 1 or 2 topics and we could talk for 3. I mean, that's how unique this time is. You know, we could just talk about what's going on with the school system and the change in leadership there and what that means. That there's no school and how we're handling things. So I'm choosing to be very deliberate around some information I'm going to share with you all about what we are doing. I'm going to ask, you know, if there's questions about things specifically that people want to know about, and just try to hit on those. And I, like all of you, are very excited and anticipating how our students are going to talk, because we felt like what was most important about tonight was what maybe I could share about what we're doing. And then also from the student perspective that we all value beyond anything I think that we get out of these meetings. So that makes sense to everybody?
Yeah.
All right. So just in terms of what we're doing, when I talked about those donations a minute ago, one really interesting aspect of these last couple of months is that we've had a much more, I'd say, much more frequent people reaching out to me and to the youth services and to the senior center wanting to offer help. So it's not an uncommon occurrence in these days for me to get a message or an email or a call from somebody just saying, you know, hey, I live in the community, I work in the community, I have X, Y, and Z that I want to do. And so those 2 donations that actually came all the way through are 2 examples, but there's probably maybe another 5 to 10 people that I've talked to in various stages. Some I refer back to neighbor because it just was more appropriate and easier for them to maybe make a donation in that direction. I actually had a couple of weeks of conversations with Jim Schreck from Lenny and Joe's, and he was really really excited to try to pull something together where he could provide meals to people. And we just, between myself and Carrie Gasta from the Beach and Rec Department, we just couldn't make that go. So just know that, you know, we are constantly hearing from people that wanted help and want to donate things. I'm doing the best I can to direct them. In some cases, they wind up donations through us. In other ways, you know, I'm just trying to point them in a way that they can be helpful, and then just feeling good about that, you know, because we can't do everything. We can do a lot, but we can't do it all. In terms of our programming, so the first thing I'd like to tell you is I'm really proud and pleased to tell you, particularly, well, really across all the areas that we operate, you know, we moved very quickly to adapting to the remote world. So the town had a couple of weeks back in March where we were moving to remote operations, and then there was a date where we went completely remote and offices were essentially closed. So for how we experienced that, all of our staff went to remote operations. We looked at our individual areas and started to figure out like how we could continue to do what we normally do. So our positive youth development folks, like they were on Zoom meetings before, like I even knew what a Zoom meeting was. You know, Derek was saying, hey, we had like 10 kids on a Zoom meeting yesterday, and we had it was like the day before that we were talking about, well, I don't know how we're going to keep up with all these groups. So we had a few people here that adapted quickly, made use of the technology, and very quickly we were just keeping up with all the programs we were before. And some of the numbers are actually kind of impressive. Like we had a couple with on Zoom with peer advocate alumni and peer helper alumni that were between 45 to 55 that were involved. And so like that was happening very quickly, and that's continued. So we've continued actually to pull groups of kids together as young as Brown School. So we had Katie ran a few of the Zoom meetings with the mentoring group, and kept up where every group that we could all the way through the upper middle school and at the high school level, to keep kids, whether they were small groups, and most of them were probably like, you know, the neighborhood of 8 to 12 kids. Not all of them were huge, but we were able to continue with that, and I'm really pleased to tell everyone about that. Our program that goes into the schools through health classes, obviously safe rides, things like that, we could not run. So those are obviously not happening now. In terms of our clinic, the actual referrals coming in are lower. So, and we think there's a couple factors with that. One, when all of the pandemic happened going into there wasn't really a sense of what anyone was doing. You know, certainly we were trying to tell people on Facebook and wherever we could that we were still here and we're taking calls. But we think with a lot of the chaos that was going on, you know, the people that knew us, the families that were already connected with us, they were calling and we were keeping up with them, but it didn't necessarily translate in a lot of new calls. We did pick up in our volume with social services. You know, as one might imagine, there were calls for heating assistance and for food as people were starting to lose their jobs and needing to figure things out. So that picked up. In our clinic, we did move to doing virtual appointments. We had about a 2 to 3 week lag from the point where we went remote to the point where we were ready to actually launch with virtual appointments. We had never done that before. So that landscape was really unknown to us. And we weren't, you know, there were a lot of implications for that. We had to pick a service that was HIPAA compliant. They had, you know, there was a lot of information coming from different insurance carriers, and you know, just with advice about how to do them and then how to be billable, and some things were actually changed quite a bit in order for more people to do virtual sessions. So we were able to pick up on that pretty quick, but it took us a couple of weeks to get there. And once we started getting into them, I think that the number just over the course of April was like 108 actual sessions that we had done with people through the virtual option. Typically, I look back at other months, typically we're at a number of like 180 sessions on average that we do through our clinical services. So the number is a little bit down, but still a pretty solid number considering all of it's virtual. And not every family, not every kid wants to do those appointments. So we're still, you know, at a point where for families that just want phone contact, or they're fine until, you know, they need us for something, you know, we're doing that. And for the people that want and need the virtual sessions, and then that's what they're getting. As you might expect, the typical issues now, adapting to virtual learning, stress management, anxiety, all of those, you know, so it's not necessarily, we're not seeing like a larger number, but we're seeing a much greater intensity around a lot of what people are talking about. Our school, the people that are, you know, like Aaron and Taylor, who work with the school systems, they've been extremely busy. So even though their caseloads are mostly students, a lot of those students had trouble adapting into virtual learning. And so their role as a counselor, they were pulled in to help support those kids, support those families. And so I think, you know, where they are typically there in the school systems and kids are finding their way to them through their school day, you know, it translated into parents calling them, asking them for help, the students obviously wanting some assistance. Sometimes it was troubleshooting because if students were already somewhat avoidant of school or having issues before, like being home and not having to go to school was a whole new world. So a lot of challenges in that particular area. As I said, social services certainly kicked up. I talked with them a little bit, and just in terms of April, there was at one point in a 2-week period about 28 different 21 different clients that they had served. 12 of those were new, and that was like a week and a half as we were ending up April. We did create our own COVID assistance program. I think maybe some of you might have seen some of that on Facebook. We were asked by Neighbor to Neighbor to come up with a way to disperse quite a bit of funding. In our initial attempt to get that money out there, we created a program with a lot of income guidelines. We wanted to make sure that we got the money to people that were already maybe marginally functioning financially. So we want to make sure we got money to people. We were afraid it was going to go very fast. So when we started with our income guidelines being pretty tight, the initial response was actually pretty low. And we think some of that was because just getting the word out. And also we probably turned off some people that might have wanted the help, but had never had to apply for help before. So we shifted gears. We only intended to do that for a couple of weeks, and then it was our plan to look at it and figure out what we were doing from there. If it was working, we'd stick with it. If it wasn't, we'd change it. We decided very quickly we needed to change it, and had conversations with Neighbor to Neighbor to say that, we felt like, the applications we got were solid and we were happy to help those people. But if we were going to help more people, we were going to need to change gears. So, and they were very happy to do that. I mean, I'll tell you, literally, Lori Heflin was like, if we're turning people off with some of the guidelines, we don't want to do that. And I think it is true in this community. One of the kind of natural barriers that people will have is their pride and the stigma that's attached with getting assistance. So if we're going to be honest with ourselves and we're going to find a way to get rid of that obstacle, we have to approach it differently, not be as protective, but more being, hey, this is okay. If you've lost your job, or if you're taking care of somebody who's sick, or you're isolating, it's not for us to judge that, make use of this. It's not a lot of money. To kind of parcel it out, what we're doing is you can apply for families, it's 500, for couples, it's 400, and for an individual, it's 3. So it's not a lot of money, but it is maybe a car payment or some food or, an electric bill, which does help. So anyway, so we, after 2 weeks of that initial program, we essentially just went through it and just took out all the pieces we felt were obstacles, and then changed the pitch in terms of how we promoted it. We took the word assistance out of the title of it, and we just called it the COVID Impact Program. And since then, over the last couple of weeks, I think we had we averaged like an application per day. So I can tell you, as of last Thursday, we've altogether in that program, we've taken 15 applications, and we've expended about $6,900 just around that one program. And I know that we've had at least 2 or 3 applications that I'm aware of since last Thursday. So that's going to continue, I think, for a while. And we're going to keep that program open-ended. And we're promoting that as long as the funding's there. We want people to apply. If 30 days goes by and we still have funding and people want to apply again, that's fine. If it's helping, the same person twice in a month, in a 2-month period, fine. That's what it's meant for. And feel really good about that, because that's the conversations we've had with Neighbor to Neighbor. This is how they want this money. They want it to go out to people. So, again, it's, as a board, please, if you're asked about this, or if anyone's asking about if people can get help with COVID, the answer is a resounding yes. Get them in contact with us. If it's not this program, we also have, we still have the Neighbor to Neighbor discretionary fund. And that alone, we paid out another $3,600 over the last few weeks to people for not necessarily just COVID issues, but things that we would normally help them with. One big problem with this whole thing is that as state agencies started to limit their staffing, the problems at Department of Social Services that you might have had in lag time and processing paperwork just got worse. So we did actually have to help people with energy assistance because we weren't able to help them get through the process any quicker. So they were still running out of oil. even though their paperwork was submitted because it was sitting somewhere. So, that is still going on. Any questions on any of those areas?
So Scott, just on the counseling that's been done, and how are so do the counselors believe that they're as effective or pretty close to being as effective as some of the face-to-face they've done? And how are the people that are getting the counseling done? Are they relatively comfortable?
Those are great questions. I think I'll speak to my experience with them. They're weird in the beginning. And so like you're talking to a teenager who's sitting in their own bedroom and just, so it's a totally different environment. And in a way they're more relaxed and, they're choosing to sit wherever they want to sit. And as soon as you kind of get used to that and you get into whatever it is that you need to get into in terms of the session, it does tend to feel a little bit more normal. What's really difficult is getting families, where in some cases, if you had a parent who was bringing somebody for counseling, it's easier to, with the client's permission, to bring them into a room and then have a conversation when you need to. It's a little bit harder when, they're holding a phone or they're holding a laptop, because you can't kind of squeeze people in. And a lot of times people are using their headphones. So, I know for myself, I've had young people who didn't want to take their headphones off because it was private. It was, they didn't want to pull people in or squeeze people in front of a screen. So I think on balance, it's definitely a good option, and probably a better option for some than others. It has its drawbacks. Helps on the convenience side, but it is definitely a different way of doing this kind of work. And I know we have other therapists on our board. I'd be curious to hear anyone's reactions to that, if you've had similar kind of experiences to what I just described.
I think that it's been a transition for everybody to try and figure out, what the best therapy models are. So since insurance companies were okay with any form of information, you can now use FaceTime or telehealth or even Facebook. I don't do it, but you can use any kind of virtual, and people are using headphones. It's very hard to see body language and to connect in the same way, but it's more effective than nothing.
Yeah, better than the phone. I think definitely better than the phone. And I think for myself, and I think on balance, we've done a lot of case management with parents by phone. So like the sessions maybe are with the young people, and then we're following up with phone calls for parents. And parents are very stressed. I mean, I think any parent that we've connected with, anything around this, it's everything that you would imagine is going on. And in some cases it's, maybe they've lost a job or lost income because they can't work. And they're trying to navigate, the virtual learning for their kids.
Yeah. So Robert had a question.
Scott, I was just curious. You can record these. Can you record the sessions?
That's an option, but we're not doing that. We're not recording.
Yeah, but can the families record? Like I could record this from here. Can they record their own sessions with you?
I'm not, so we're using Doxy, doxy.me. And I don't know if they have that option to record the sessions.
No, they would need a second device. You could record it like using a phone. I could record it like this, but they wouldn't have to tell you that. But not through Doxy, not through telehealth.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Sarah.
My question, Scott, was, have you seen reimbursements for this yet? And is it equal to, less than your traditional visit reimbursement?
So in our case, we initially, we're getting less, but that's because we're we're excusing the copay. And some of that's because there are insurances that did direct us to not collect the copay. And we were deciding up front that was something we didn't want to do, to make it a little more affordable to families. So yeah, we are collecting as we were before, and maybe slightly less.
Got some of the insurance companies are paying the co-pays, so you should have that looked into, which companies
I
are doing
will.
that.
Scott, how are we projecting out on budget? Not that should be about money, but are we concerned at all? Is anybody from the town reaching out to you for updates on budget for the year in terms of the revenue portion?
Nobody's asking us more about the revenue portion, and we are actually on track. We
Okay.
were pretty well on target leading into this, and I think we'll be fine. We'll wind up on target for what our initial projection was. Had things gone more normal, I think we would have shot past our projected number. We are being asked now to look at our budget lines and all of our expenditures and that's typical for this time of year. The only difference this year is that we do need to get things together a little earlier because the town is transitioning its accounting system on July 1st. So there's a little extra push towards getting things clarified. By the end of May. Usually we have a little bit of lead time into early June, but this year not so much, and that's fine.
Just to go back to what you were saying earlier about the parents being stressed, I think that's been tremendous impact on families in terms of substance abuse, in terms of domestic violence, in terms of these parents that are expected to be at work all day and teach their kids online learning and watch their young children, 2-3-year-olds in the same room while they're expected to be working. It's really been incredibly stressful on these families.
Yeah, and I think that's taxing on families that that don't have some of the other sort of predisposing the issues. For families that were functioning pretty well and had a decent handle on things, it's incredibly challenging, really for everybody. Lauren was just telling us stories before we came on about what her experience has been like, having to host meetings and have her 2 small children around. So that's a great point. And I tell you, I think one of the biggest concerns that we have is there's likely a lot that we don't know at this point. We've had conversations with people within the school system, and they're just as concerned around some of these families. For the students that maybe had trouble transitioning to the virtual learning, or they weren't connecting as much with some of their school supports that they had before. Certainly special education students, you'd have to in a few cases where they weren't getting some of the help that they got before. So we may come to find out that there are many not so great things that have happened during this time that we may need to address down the line. I was talking to Angela this morning about what else we can do to just be more specific about the clinic support. I have a funny feeling that a lot of the stress from parents is likely being communicated to pediatricians, that people may not be thinking about reaching out as much directly to mental health professionals because it may not have been something they would have done, or they might be assuming that we're not, since they can't come in for an appointment, that the support doesn't exist. I'm not sure.
I think that's a really important point, and I think that we have to do a really good job of marketing ourselves to be one of those resources that parents can come to for mental health assistance, and not just be seen as just a pediatrician or a school issue. I know parents are organizing groups on Facebook. They're doing Zoom calls. They're trying to find ways to alleviate some of the stress on the families right now, whether it's financial or educational or mostly childcare, especially when, part of the state is going to open up on the 20th and they're expected to go back to work, and there's no school and there's no funding for daycares. And there's many families that are incredibly worried about what to do with their children.
Yeah. So I'm glad you brought up the daycare. So, we have a COVID assistance program that's cash assistance. We're already looking at what another program might look like. I know from neighbor to neighbor that there's, that they continue to receive donated funds that are specific to help people deal with the impact of COVID. And we're looking at ways to design something that might help subsidize childcare. And we're also talking about, I had a conversation with Beach and Rec today about is there something we do to support teenagers to get training on being babysitters? Are there, we can't run a babysitting or a child care program per se, but we can maybe create something that, young people maybe could do to get a certification.
They
and help
already have that
organize.
through Beach and Rec.
Yeah, well, it was the women's club. So the Beach and Rec, the women's club ran it, but it was, I think, supported, and I think Beach and Rec sort of facilitated, the sign up for it. And it's something I guess they had wanted to do it last year, but then they didn't get enough participants. And and the circumstances might be very different where, if we did something like this and it was, people could go through a program over a week or so, get a certification, and then we can help somehow create a list that parents could maybe find their way to some teenagers to get some help that way.
I also offers a virtual program for free online.
Who does?
Why?
Okay.
Yeah.
Good to know.
And so Scott, so I think unlike where we normally get the hook by that nice lady at the senior
Yep.
center here, I think at 8 o'clock we go black. Is that maybe, no,
Okay.
we'll keep going. Is that
So,
right, Lauren?
um,
Lauren? Yeah, okay.
So if I just want to say one more thing that's important. So we are doing an awards. We have our yearly annual awards. This year, we're going to do them on June 2nd. We're looking at this as a kind of a 2-phase thing. We are hoping to organize a small parade, which may just be 1 or 2 cars of us going to these individual award winners to give them their award, and then maybe do a Zoom meeting that night. So if you would just put June 2nd as a placeholder, I'd appreciate it. And I didn't talk about much more in terms of what we're doing administratively, but I think you got the gist. And so if there's other questions about that later after the students, or you can reach out to me after the meeting. Thanks, everybody.
Okay, thanks, Scott. So moving to the student reports, Jake, Lauren?
Okay, hey guys, first I just want to say it's so nice to see everyone and I hope you're all doing well, even though it's great to see everyone's faces. I wanted to start off with some positive news I want to hear. So first of all, my club, Feeding Connecticut, that I'm the president, actually raised over 3,000 and it's going up. So I'm really proud of that. And then to UConn, I told you guys if we had a board meeting, but I'm sharing it here. And then something that's really important to Jake and I that we've noticed a lot is students feeling really overwhelmed and overworked, the workload, and not that much support. And especially for seniors, I've noticed there's a huge loss of motivation ever since the year was canceled, and we kind of don't know what we have senior brunch. Are we having prom happening? And so everyone has a big loss of motivation. So they want to try to meet with Mr. Salutary on Zoom and be the Board of Ed representative, try to figure out a plan and figure out some way that we can communicate to the students what administration is thinking, because right now I know seniors especially just feel they don't know anything. Everything's kind of a big question mark. So that's something Jake and I definitely want to do with Salutary.
Yeah. And like Lauren said, the whole idea of being extremely overworked is definitely something that we're seeing. There's a major difference between students in level 2 and 3 classes workload and students in level 1 honors, AP, and UConn. It's a very big difference. The kids in level 2 and 3, from what I've been hearing, are actually having a really good time. They're just they're not doing too much. It's really just school for them. It's perfectly normal. And then you get the kids in the honors, AP, UConn, level 1, and it's holy shit, we are getting extremely overworked. It is insane. It's what we're doing is so we're going on Zoom or Google Meet in the class period allotted time. And then after that, we have to do our classwork for the day. And then after that, we have to do our homework for the day. And it's just it's so much stuff, and it's for every single class. So when you have kids in all AP, all honor, all level 1, it's a lot of stuff to catch up on every single day. And it's just exhausting to stay with.
Yeah, it really
before
feels
the break.
I was going to say, it really feels like the teachers are just okay, well, you have the day and you don't have anything to do, so let me just split up with work. But it's I feel students' mental health and things students can make themselves happy and stay positive are just being swept under the carpet.
Yeah, Before the break, I was consistently staying up working on school until 3 a.m. It was at the point where I was working all day. Like I don't have time to exercise. I don't have time to do anything really for like my mental health. It's all just work.
Yeah.
And then you come into this time. What's this week? This week we have AP exams. So now it's added on even more stress, like now it's okay. We got to really focus. This is a cumulative exam that's covered every single topic that we've learned all year. So now we got to study for the AP exams, and we got to make sure that we're doing well on the AP exam so we get good college credit and we're not taking these hard classes for nothing. Like it's a lot of work that's getting put on us. And then you add on the fact that we're getting classwork on top of studying for this stuff. And it's like really overwhelming.
So
And
Jake,
yeah.
so Jake, I'm sorry, but with that, could you just maybe describe what's different between that workload and this other class Zoom activity compared to what we would have expected to happen if you were back in class? I mean, is it the amount of work? Is it the way it's being metered out? Or yeah, thanks.
So I think the best class really to exemplify this would be probably APUSH. So normally how our APUSH school week goes is every single night you have an assigned reading assignment, and you just need to make sure that you're doing your assigned reading every night. And then in class the next day, you discuss the reading. At the end of the week, you have a quiz. Now what we're doing is we have our little quizzes, which are discussion questions. So each group has to do their discussion questions for the one designated week. And they have to answer a question based on the section they read the night before every single day. Added on to that, you have classwork now too. So instead of discussing what you learned from the reading last night and getting a better understanding of the reading, hanging out in class and just like being chill, like it's not like that anymore. Now it's classwork added on top of that. So now it's, okay, so you're given this reading now today too. You need to fill out this based on the reading and fill this out, and you need to have this turned in by tomorrow. This is what it's like for every single class now, where you're getting work added on to work. It's not the normal workload whatsoever. It's basically the workload times 2. You're getting added classwork and homework, along with going to a Zoom class every single day. The Zoom classes aren't covering classwork material. The Zoom classes are getting a chance to reconnect with teachers and peers. This is really needed. We need to have that connection with each other, but you can't be slamming kids with classwork, homework, and a Zoom class. It's impractical, and kids are staying up way too late. Like personally, I don't like staying up till 3 a.m. working every night whatsoever.
Jake, is that feedback getting back to the school though, and to the administrators?
Not whatsoever.
Well, Jake, I mean, okay, so to be fair, I'm not teaching an honors class, and so I'm not feeling the pain that you're experiencing, and I have heard it. There was a survey, and there was a survey that about a third of the student population took. And
it didn't differentiate between level 1 classes. I mean, there was an option about AP UConn, but it really didn't differentiate between the classes. So, I mean, the feedback was probably extremely mixed if I had to guess.
It was extremely mixed, but you could read a lot into you could see the stress in it. I mean, if you read the comments, and I know the administration did, feedback has gotten there. I don't know if it's going to be feedback that's going to cause any change. But
I'm not feeling change.
Well, right. I mean, and it was released only, to us about 2 weeks ago. So, and I mean, it hasn't really generated any action that I'm aware of either. So but
it's a shame because they have finals coming up for these AP classes. This is a very large issue that I'm hearing from tons of students. Lots and lots of high honor students are feeling this way.
I guess, but I have a senior in my house now, and I have a college student, and I've heard that, and Dave, maybe you can sort of speak to this a little bit, but there's a perspective also that there's an adjustment period for the teachers as well. It's not just the students. They're learning how to teach online. And so I think as long as the feedback is flowing, and I think that's the key, ensuring that the conversation is happening, then maybe there's tweaks to the curriculum, maybe there's tweaks to the amount of homework, the amount of effort that you guys are putting in, but I think there's got to be that conversation.
Well, okay, so I have I hate to say it, I have little hope for substantial change this trimester. I really do. We're we're in 5 weeks. You're going through your UConn experience
Yeah,
now.
exactly.
I really don't have a lot of great thoughts about how it's going to change anything substantially this trimester. I have a lot of concerns for whether or not we bring this learning into into the fall, should God forbid we find ourselves in a similar situation, and which is certainly a possibility. So Jake, I really do encourage you and Lauren and the rest of the student leadership to have conversations with Mr. Salutary. I believe some of this is a remnant of a tool that we were asked to do. You know, we didn't have training on this. We kind of went home on a Friday, and a week later we were, asked to put lesson plans together. But we were asked to hold kids accountable on a daily basis to tasks, and actually to put them into a plan weeks out. So I've planned out your 8th week already, right? We're in week 6 today, and so I've published an 8th week. I was required to, which is not how you would ever teach. You would never put a plan together 3 weeks out without being able to tweak it based on what kids know and learn. I don't want to go too deep on this because of time, but the reality is we were asked to put a daily check-in, which we might not do in a classroom setting. The daily check in a classroom setting would be, hey, Jake, do you understand what I'm saying? You do? Good. And we move on. But now we were asked to have something on a daily basis, since we couldn't expect kids to necessarily be on a call, to actually give us a work product every day. And I think that's what you're experiencing, is the addition of, a daily work product in addition to all the other learning that you had to do. And I think that's something that we want to make sure that we don't necessarily bake into next year or any other distance learning situation.
But Dave, are the teachers adjusting at all? Because at least in my household, I'm feeling like, and I'm hearing that it is happening, that the teachers realize that maybe there was too much at the beginning and they're pulling back a little bit.
Yeah, most of us have pulled back a little. It doesn't sound like it's really trickled down to the level 1 classes.
Well, it's hard. I mean, like, I really understand. I get that it's really hard for teachers to adjust to this. It's really hard for a lot of people to like switch. Like, it's like a transition. Like, it's not easy for anyone. I totally understand that. But I mean, it's gotten to the point where like, I'm literally like, I cannot work on the stuff that I love. I cannot do Unity Club right now. I cannot work on the Youth Coalition. And I love doing this stuff. Right. And I have no time. I don't even have time for myself.
Right.
And like, it's gotten to the point where it's like, why is this happening? I reached out to administration. Actually, I have an administrative ally who actually said she would love to work with me on like all these clubs and stuff, like Unity and diversity and valor, like all this stuff. And it's awesome. And she was like, wow, like you have this like good workload. You have like high level classes. Maybe just reach out to your teachers and ask for a lighter workload for this week. So I did. And like, yeah, I got it. But the problem is, so now I'm doing all these AP exams. So I've been studying for chemistry for 3 days straight. I made a 78-page study guide for chemistry. I also have A push the next day. So I have chemistry on Thursday and then A push on Friday. I haven't done any studying for A push. This weekend, I now have to make up all my work for the entire week for Spanish 5 AP, for American Lit Honors, and for gym. So not only am I going to be spending all this week studying for exams and losing like a ton of sleep, I'm also going to be doing work all weekend and studying for my Spanish exam next week. It's just like kids who fall behind have no way of catching up.
And that's the reality is I think for the typical level 2 kid, level 3 kid, we're probably managing their workload okay. There's a large portion of kids that are straight level 1 kids. And what I've heard and what the survey kind of showed was that those kids really do feel like they are overwhelmed. And I can't see, I don't see it, unfortunately, because I physically don't see it, but I hear it, and it's always a concern. And I think it's more of a concern in distance learning than it's been in the past.
And honestly, this should really say something. Like, I don't know if it is like understood how much it means to have a student who is pushing themselves every single year consistently, adding on a greater workload, taking college level classes in high school, taking AP classes in high school, and just continually pushing themselves every single year, adding more of a workload. To be the first person to be asking for help, to be the first person asking for a lighter workload, that is not a characteristic of the kids who are in these classes whatsoever. We are the kids who will be the first to add on a greater workload. But this is not a time when we are doing that for a reason. It really does speak to the nature of us. You know, like, we do push ourselves to the extreme as much as possible. We want to be the people who are like that. You know, we enjoy learning this stuff. We enjoy pushing ourselves. But when we're asking for help, when we're calling for help, we do need a response. We need something back. Like, nothing's being done, it feels like. Like, I understand it's planned in advance, but it just seems like things need to be done. And if it's not on a teacher level, it has to be done on an administrative level. And that's what I'm hoping to get out of the meeting with Salutary, because quite frankly, I'm really disappointed in how this whole thing's been handled. I really do not think that the administrative people have had any good positivity that they've shared with us. They're not communicating well about events like prom, the brunch, graduation. They're not communicating any of that with seniors. They're not taking into account any of the stuff that juniors are going through. We're missing college visits. I don't even have an SAT done. Like, all that stuff, and then add on like AP exams and stuff. I mean, it's like, there's a lot of stuff that's going on, and administration is really not being an ally right now. And it's a time when it's crucial to have administration be an ally.
Yeah, well, it certainly sounds like you're talking to the right people and communicating. You know, Mr. Salutary and some of the other people that, Jake, that you talked about. This is really right. This is uncharted waters for everyone, for the students, for the educators, everyone. Very dynamic situation. It was really only just within the last week that it was announced that we weren't going back to school this year, right? So it does make decision making and communication difficult. That doesn't help you in the situation that you're describing. It certainly kind of just helps explain why we are at where we're at. But talking to the people that you're talking to certainly sounds like it's the right people to make an impact in what's going on.
Well, and it's why I'm coming to you guys, because like the board, I view, like, Madison Youth and Family, I view is the part of the community that is supposed to be fostering support for youth. It's the place that has opportunity for youth. It's the place where kids go and they feel welcome and they feel like they can talk and rant to an adult and have an adult relationship. You know, like, that is what Madison Youth and Family is supposed to be to me. It's not a place where you go and you get punished for doing something wrong or getting in trouble with drugs. Like, that's not the place that I envision Madison Youth and Family. I envision Madison Youth and Family as a place of adult allies in the community. And that's what I really want it to be. You know, like, I really want to be able to go into Madison Youth and Family at any time and just be like, you know what? I had a really shitty day and I would love to talk to someone here about it. You know,
So listen,
What can we do to help you?
Let me jump in here, because I again, I think just for time. So
group counseling session for Jake.
Yeah, listen, and that's great. I'm glad that we're here. I think you're speaking to an adult community, or a representation of an adult community, and nobody here is denying anything that you're saying. And if anything, I think it's resonating very well. I think you're also hearing other sides of it. There are reasons why things are maybe feeling as bad as they are, as people are just trying to figure this out. So, I just want to speak to a couple things. Your decision to reach out to Mr. Sayu is a really important one, because I think it's a good conversation for you guys to have with him. And I think for board members, as well as myself, if we have conduits into the school system, to use them and say, we're hearing from students on our board about a lot of stress and concern. I'm sure that wouldn't be a surprise to anybody in the school system. It may help for us or for people individually if you are going to reach out to the school, if there's things that we think maybe can help the situation. I think the schools know what the challenges are. It's a shortage on time and a shortage on ideas to fix things as quickly as maybe we'd want them to. And Jake, I would say to you, as I would say to any student, while you can't walk in here physically, you can call, you can Zoom. You've got some allies, that people that you're close to within the youth services. You've got fellow peer advocates, and I know that you're working to keep that peer advocate room, even if it's virtual now, open. So I think that's an avenue. You got to lean on people as you make decisions for yourself and you try to cope with this situation.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's not even just during the pandemic, you know, like Madison Youth and Family has to maintain its role in the community as being the support of youth. I mean, I think that we've taken a really big focus on drug and substance prevention. And I think that it's definitely done a lot of good work in the community, but I don't necessarily think that's something that we should be focusing as much attention on as we do. I think our main priority in the community should be support for youth first and foremost at all times. We've kind of had this mentality of punitive punishments being the way to go. And I don't know if that's the way to go, because that's a major turnoff for a lot of youth in the community. You're losing youth because of the way that we have it. It's an antiquated system, really. I mean, there's articles published like 100 about why punitive punishment doesn't work. And I mean, it's just something that we have to consider moving forward. We have to modernize the way we approach things. Stopping substance abuse isn't going to be through punitive punishment. It doesn't work long term. The way to stop this is by supporting the youth, by making sure that the youth feel like they have someone they can talk to, by making sure they aren't going to turn to substances when they're feeling depressed, when they're feeling anxious. I mean, look at the survey data. You have so many kids in high school who are depressed, who are anxious. It's not even about the substance abuse at this point. It's literally about the depression and the anxiety. Kids turn to substances when they feel that way. That's why they're going there. They have problems in their life. They turn to substances. What does it do? It makes them feel numb. It makes them forget. And it makes them feel like they're finally relaxed, like they don't have a worry in the world. That's why kids are turning to substances. It's not for fun. It's not because of peer pressure. We've been over this and we know that peer pressure isn't necessarily the reason why anymore. It's internal. And I mean, it's manifesting, and it's really concerning that kids are so stressed out, that they're so depressed, that they're so anxious, that they're turning to substances. And I mean, Madison Youth and Family can do something about this. This is where the support comes. This is where the support is vital. We have to ensure that youth know there is a place in the community where they can go at all times.
Okay. Well, thanks, Jake, and thanks for that. And I think you've certainly made that point. And just on this, is there anything that anybody else would like to say about this issue? And
I just want to offer that, Jake, if it would help for any of the members of the board to be on or involved in this meeting with you and Mr. Salutary, I'm sure that you could reach out to any of them. I know I'd personally be happy to sit in with you if you thought it would be helpful. Just reach out to me privately through email or through some other means.
I'll come join as well, Jake, if you want.
Yeah.
Okay.
But you just let Mr. Salutary know what you're planning to do.
Yeah.
So we'll rush the administration.
Mr. Buller, Mr. Murphy, Ms. Snyder. Anyone else?
But again, like I said, just make sure you communicate to Mr. Salutary in advance what you're doing.
Yeah, of course.
And I think, and you want to be constructive. And if I think because we're going to lose time, I just want to say I appreciate what you're saying, and I agree with it wholeheartedly. I'm not sure when you were talking about we got to change from punishment. We don't punish people here.
I know, but
hold on, let me just finish, okay? Because there's a lot that you just put out there, and I think everyone would agree with your passion. I think everybody would really agree on almost every single point that you made, including myself. And it is a question of all of us sort of moving in a similar direction. You know, we don't parcel out kids between whether they're using substances, you know, for whatever reason. If that's what they come in and that's what they need help with, that's what we help with. And nobody here believes or thinks that it's just a simple thing in terms of punishing, or that kids are doing things just to have fun and winding up in trouble all the time. We know that it's much more complicated than that. So I say thank you for what you shared, and we need as much of that energy, you know, and helping us all go in the same direction.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it's hard because I mean, just looking like how like there's a member of the Madison Youth and Family staff who runs the juvenile review board, you know, like it's associating itself with stuff that does give punishments, with stuff that does do stuff
Jake,
like that.
That's
right?
I gotta correct you there. No, that's a diversion program. That's taking kids out of court. So that's who've gotten caught breaking the law, and rather than them going to court and facing a judge, that's bringing them to what is a people that represent areas of the community, and then coming out with a plan to address it. Most of the time, that includes counseling.
Okay,
So,
I mean,
Yeah.
that's
So, and
just what
not-
I've
Yep.
heard.
So then if we could
That's
just,
a diversion program.
yeah, so thanks. And then just maybe if Lauren, is there anything else from the students that we should really talk about on this particular call?
I think the last thing was just that Melissa and Derek did peer advocate meetings with like each grade, which I thought was really beneficial, at least for the senior one that I did. And they've been doing normal meetings too with like all grades. But the one with seniors, I felt like was really cool. And it was like a good way for me to like talk to some students who I found out like another peer advocate's going to UConn, and I literally would have never known this. Like we met and we got to talk about it, and he hadn't seen the campus, and I was able to tell him about what I've seen when I've gone there. And like it was kind of like, it was a cool way where we could all be like, oh, this is off, but like we were talking about what things we did that were positive. And I thought that was just something cool that Madison Youth did that positively affected some students. So I just
I
wanted to talk
also,
about that.
I can talk about my clubs and stuff too, if you want. And like the Substance Abuse Prevention Coalition.
Yeah, so just Kathleen has a question.
Yeah,
sure.
just a question about the seniors, just the emotional state
Mhm.
of the seniors, what they're going through now. Is there anything we can do to support them? I know, missing out on all of those experiences, is there a replacement for those experiences, Lauren?
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, I
The
feel
names
like
are up on the cinema right now.
Yeah, I
Kinda
know
cool.
that I personally have had a really hard time staying motivated, especially after everything was canceled, just because, and especially like the lack of communication with administration and students, I think really like was impactful, because I know like teachers didn't know much, but my teachers were saying, oh, we still might go back, we still might go back. And like maybe it was unrealistic for me to think, but I still kept my hopes up, and I thought maybe senior year is not over. And then after like they announced it, I was just like, and like this week, like going back to school after break has just been so hard to get back into everything. So I think that's why I really want to talk to Mr. Salutary about just like better communication with the seniors, especially. And like, just if he could just say, oh, this is what we're thinking, maybe like if it could just be kind of a more public brainstorm, it doesn't even have to be, or just something I could pass along, because I know a lot of my friends, especially like seniors who are struggling with like mental health issues and always had, I know a lot of stuff is coming back just because it really feels like everything's crumbling down. And like I definitely just want to bring all that to Mr. Salutary, because like my mom told me that like the school was asking like parents like what they could do for graduation, or like parents can think of an idea for graduation. And I was like, oh my gosh, because like I don't know like how our parents would think of something. So everything's very up in the air, and it's definitely been hard. But
It's time alone, stuck in the house, a lot of time to think. It's not necessarily a good thing for a lot of people.
yeah.
No,
Understood.
too much of a good thing.
Concerning, especially when you have stuff like the survey showing that there are kids who are depressed regularly too, like
Yeah.
it's just like really tough, because like how do you help these kids? How do you reach out when we're all stuck at home? How do you get them out of their heads? How do you get them involved in activities that are socially distant?
Yeah.
It's really tough.
It is.
I can talk about my
Challenge.
other stuff too now. So since you guys haven't actually heard from me in a while, Unity Club is up and running now, like officially. We are the student branch of the Madison Diversity and Inclusion Committee, but we are completely not based on any adult advisors whatsoever, really. JMP is the technical advisor, but I mean, we really are student run, student operated, and for the students, which is really powerful because, we push our agendas. We don't really ask for anyone's permission. We don't really ask for like any instruction. We just kind of do what we feel needs to be done in our school community. And I really enjoy leading it a lot. We started our Spread the Word to End the Words campaign, but unfortunately we had to cut it short because of Corona. So then we switched and we started the Forgive a Friend campaign, which was centered on just mending bad blood and just overall trying to reconnect with people and not leave hand with any regrets or feelings like things could have went better between you and a friend, or you could have had a better relationship and you ended your friendship over something stupid. It was just kind of giving people a reason why to reach out and, you know, fix relationships in their lives that they kind of messed up when they were younger and stupid, stuff like that. Representative Kokaruda actually endorsed the campaign too. She said that she liked it a lot. I got widespread approval of it. I mean, a lot of people really endorsed it and it was just awesome. And I posted it in the Madison Diversity and Inclusion Committee and it was just awesome. And I really enjoyed that.
How many kids did you get respond to that, Jake?
We got a lot of responses, like positive responses. We got it. It was at the point where kids were literally posting on their Instagram stories to stop posting about Unity Club because they were so tired of seeing the same stuff over and over again. Like, I think that we had over 65 kids post on their stories about Forgive a Friend and endorsing it. And it was just really freaking awesome. And I was just like, let's go.
One day, right? That's amazing.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Jake. So we're about 10 minutes or so over our allotted time. So I don't really want to cut you off, but we are tracking up against the end. And so maybe unless there's something very important for the group to know, maybe we can save some of these things for the June meeting and make sure we really devote the proper time to some of the other things that you're addressing. Okay. So is there anything else that you know, in just 1 or 2 minutes would like to share?
So we started a youth substance abuse prevention coalition in town called Valor, and it's actually headed by the 2 people who work for MAID at Madison Youth and Family, I believe, if I'm speaking correctly.
Yes. One of the
Crystal
same, yep.
DiPietro and Catherine Barden, and they're amazing people. And we were the people who presented the survey rollout data, if you went to that. And we're trying to really get as much stuff done about substance abuse prevention in a positive way, not punitive, but rather support and just welcoming people and saying, if you mess up, you know, it's okay, learn from it. And, you know, maybe we'll set you right on your path again, you know, like, let's find your passion. Let's find something you really enjoy doing and just make sure you're doing what you love and you're staying clean. And we're trying to get a student sunshine fund going, so that when something like a parent being lost happens and we can actually do something, we can send flowers, we can send a card, and we can actually make it special for the kids too, because I think it's something important.
Okay, thank you. Good, that's very nice. Okay, well, so certainly thanks to Lauren and Jake for all their feedback. As always, it's so important to the board to understand this. I appreciate the board members' comments and also those that have agreed to go in to see Mr. Salutary with you to support those comments. I myself, and I'm sure a couple of others will also be working on calling in for the next Board of Ed meeting and trying to make sure that some of these things are seen at that level, although I'm sure that they are. That we have a very sensitive group of teachers, directors, and the Board of Ed for sure. But the stuff you raised was really very timely and appreciative. Before we wrap up, Scott, do you have anything else to add?
I do want to let the board know when I had reached out over email when the budget was coming towards referendum and had asked for people to reach out to the Board of Finance around supporting our budget. There were a few very anxious days that we had here as we were getting some reports from people in leadership positions within the town who were getting panicky about how the budget was going to look next year. And they were looking at programs, services, departments like Youth and Family specifically, that wasn't necessarily connected into town infrastructure. So when I put out the request for support, many of you responded. And so the night of the budget hearing, actually, Lauren gave the report of the amount of emails, pro and con, and they were even. So at the point where I was reaching out to people, they weren't. So I know many of you, if not all of you, wrote something into the Board of Finance, if not to other town leaders. And so I need to tell you that it made a huge difference. It helped even at least part of that score and allowed, I think, for some cooler heads to prevail. So, so thank you for that. I needed to let you know that you really stepped up and made a big difference there. And I do want to say on a personal note, I haven't really had a chance to talk to you all since early April when my father passed. Really, very personally, I think I got notes, texts, phone calls, just so much support from all of you. And I just want to tell you how much that was really very meaningful to me, and I'm grateful for it. So I just wanted to say thanks to you all on that. We got a lot of work to do going forward. So we'll look forward to communicating in between, and we'll see you guys again in June.
Oh, yeah, well, you're very welcome. Any other business to be brought before the board? No. With that, meeting is adjourned. Speak with you in June.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Thanks,
Hi,
everyone.
Jake.
Bye.
Bye, guys.
Bye.